writing this book wasn't just a commission. People get commissioned to write books. This book was not something I did for college. It was, in fact, something that college did for me. It took me to the heart of a community and a place which is very much loved. And personally, it was a very profound spiritual and emotional journey. It was a very hard one, but love is usually hard. And it's exciting, and it's mysterious, and it's infuriating, and it's wild, and it's tender. And so I'd like to thank the wonderful companions who were with me all along the way, Andrians, old Andrians, and I just want to pay tribute to the anonymous old Andrian who was hardy enough and brave enough to propose me as an honorary old Andrian. It was the greatest honor of my life. David Wilde knows, as wise men know, that from the past come the template, the map, from which the future unfolds, with due depth and resonance and beauty. And because he knows that, he brought the circles of history round. He re-engaged with the Good Shepherd School, with St. Matthew's Mission. He initiated the Fish River Journey, which takes every boy at college not only into the heart of the Eastern Cape, but into his own heart as well. This was a labour for me which required grit and a journey with spiritual moments, which was best exemplified by an extraordinary moment that I had when I laid down my task. I was in Grahamstown, and very, very early one morning I walked out onto Lower Field. And there was the clock tower, impregnable, steadfast, and built of stone. And beside it, in exact line with the clock, was a huge full moon floating in the sky. It was enough to make the soul soar. And somehow that image will always be with me about the journey of this book. Incredibly hard work, but moments of great spiritual significance. With these words, I hope you will always be true to the boy in you. Jan Hofmeyr, one of South Africa's greatest and most brilliant political leaders, summed up his address at the St. Andrews College Speech Day in 1929. Be true to yourself. Remember the boy within, for there is a straightforward, redemptive power in that boy. His talent for laughter, for friendship, for loyalty, for hope. And it's in honor of that boy, whatever his age, that this book has been written. There has been a great diversity of talent at college as well. And there's a couple of unknown facts that I'm sure many of you will find interesting. For example, the theological vocabulary of isiXhosa was devised and worked at in a little house which once stood on the site of the present college chapel. And that W.G. Benny, old Andrian, was one of the first to do greatly pioneering work on the grammar of isiXhosa. And it was also in the Mullins Institution, which was in Graham House, where Robert John Mullins trained so many of the founding fathers of the ANC, the great newspaper editors, and those who became such important figures in early black nationalism. And it was he and Canon Espen, who was the headmaster of St. Andrews, who between 1864 and 1907 tutored all the black Anglican priests in the Diocese of Grahamstown. An incredibly proud history, and one that has been brought full circle now with the initiatives of St. Matthew's and the Good Shepherd School. But St. Andrews was also a pioneer of schoolboy rugby, played by the rugby union rules. The forerunner of the game as it is today, as opposed to Gog's game, which was played by Bishops and Saps. And I've been told that Bishops and Saps are still learning to play by the rugby union rules. No headmaster in the present day has ever had to stop a stone fight between Armstrong and Upper in Somerset Street.
Armstrong won.
Armstrong won. Nor has any present headmaster had to have his chaplain arrested by a posse of policemen, put in chains and deported to Australia, as the fifth headmaster had to do when his chaplain, the Reverend Digby Campbell, was arrested for bigamy. he married the daughter of one of the members of the college council while he was married to somebody else. The bigamist's trial was the scandal of Grahamstown, and the bigamist lamented in the Grocotts Penny Mail that the devil made him do it. And so the legends rolled in, the popular naughty boys and the great sportsmen like Bevel Rudd and Peter van der Merwe, Nick Mallett, Sam Sonwabe, who was on the college staff, who was the greatest black cricketer of his day, and all of these legends are so much part of our history, and I hope you will find them all entertaining if you get hold of a copy of the book. The loyalty of the college staff has been legendary over many years. There are many here this evening who will think of Drac Lucas with his 52 years of toil, bringing in 10 maths distinctions for every distinction in any other subject. David Hodgson, who's here this evening, who's been associated with college for over 60 years. John Pegana, who used to look after the swimming pool and was here for generations of boys. And T.C. Cornish, the long-standing second master, whose hallmark was to instill in boys the manners of gentlemen. But I have a story this evening which is very relevant to something that David said at Speech Day today. One year at the start of term, a very small, forlorn boy arrived at college late. He came down from West Hill Siding dragging his suitcase, but he was wearing a pair of short pants. T.C. Cornish saw him and realized that if he was seen in short pants by the other boys, he would be mercilessly teased. So he gave him 10 shillings, told him to trot down to Birch's and buy himself a pair of grey flannels. That small boy never forgot how T.C. Cornish had saved him from terrible ignominy. And 60 years later, that boy, remembering the generosity of a kind master, became one of college's greatest benefactors. Today, David Wilde told us that Tim Clapham had left millions to St Andrews College. Tim Clapham, who was one of the naughtiest boys that college ever knew, a legend in his time, was the son of the boy in short pants. So these gestures of generosity, which have been underplayed by so many and unknown to so many, come full circle. They create an avalanche at some future time, the outpouring of generosity of people like the Claphams and of every single person who has loved, who has honoured the school, and who has given so generously in the last 150 years. Whatever your experience at school, I hope that the boy still resides in you and that you have a sense of belonging to this wonderful place. Perhaps in the context of college, it's lower field with the thunder of war cries and the bagpipes and the sound of the tractor and McCunness Corp floating away on the eastern skyline. Perhaps it's the cries of the supporters. Awu, Noxi, Pemba, Soli, Maileti, Amadoda, Ase College, boom. Perhaps it's the chapel with its windows, the glowing plaques and the cross. Perhaps it's your house with its traditions, its character, its secrets, its sounds. Perhaps it's the clock tower, that most iconic structure, more recognizable than any other building at St Andrews. No wonder that within 5 minutes of becoming 16th headmaster, Anthony Clark, on arriving at Crossways, answered the phone, only to have an irate OA bellow in his ear. "Are you the new headmaster?" "Well, I'm an OA. Get that bloody clock fixed." Being an OA himself, Anne Clark didn't have to be told that no one living within the sound of the clock tower can possibly regulate his life unless it's working, even if it's the wrong time. It simply has to tong, and all is well with the world. It was a long journey to find the boy, and it seemed impossible to put my finger on his character. He was so elusive, and yet it was so simple. He was with me every day. He lived in my house, and at school, he was the beloved headmaster and deputy headmaster. He was the distinguished men that I've worked with on the book committee. He was the smallest new boy to see, to recognize, and to love. He is the little fellow who, sunlight shining through the backs of his large pink ears, threw himself like a warrior poet across the try-line, and swore that no ecstasy in life was greater. He is the fellow who listened to a talk in the college chapel about the fallen in the First World War, and who wrote a poem afterwards in which he described the last moments in battle of an old Andrian pilot trying to keep his frail little craft in the air. I am a swallow with a wounded breast. I am a plane going down. He is the boy who has kept his rugby jersey through 40 years, like an old companion, because invested in it is not glory, talent, skill, or boastfulness, but a quiet treaty with himself. He is the boy who, despite being expelled, kept with him the letters written to him by a teacher, reminding him that if he looked at his tie every now and again and measured his actions by every inch of it, he could not go wrong. He is the boy called Brooklax, Gonorrhea, Sharky, Dobie, Slung, Bottlebug, Bakhat, Chocky, Fat Chap, Overdrive, because a van drove over him when he was crossing Somerset Street. Jet Puff, Arsey, Vulture, or Woozle Wild. He is the old boy who will blub on hearing the opening lines of the college hymn and go to war unflinching. He is the boy who, in his exile and residence in a distant land, recalls the war cries on Lower, the smell of new mown grass, the little flocks of wagtails, the tongue of the clock tower. This boy, the boy in you.